The factors that affect shelf life are a couple of them. There's a couple main ones that you have to understand. One of them is temperature. So excessive temperature in cannabis drives out your terpene levels, and it also dries out the floral materia itself, the carrier. And when we start to dry this out, we start to remove these terpenes, which are essential oils, and we also start to lose some of the waxes, the lipids that allow the plant to have this greasy bioprotective feel. So temperature accelerates decomposition. Temperature also accelerates cannabinoid decomposition, so we start to go from THC into CBN, and that is desirable for some individuals, but it starts to lower your overall THC numbers, which is a detriment on a sale. The transfer of oxygen through the product is oxidization, and oxygen is an incredible destroyer. As much as we use it to breathe, it's one of the most corrosive elements in the universe. And it starts to eat up the quality of the product, and so shelf life of product that sits unprotected has a radically different time than product that has been properly jarred or sealed in a container. Those situations are crucial for the end user to understand, because they can use that information to determine, was the product created in a chain of custody all the way back from the grow with that conscious quality in mind. Bulk cannabis, meaning lower price point, the user's not as picky about it because price is the determining factor. But when it comes to quality cannabis, meaning the experience is part of that, these factors are big. And when we cure cannabis correctly, what we have is an ability to hold cannabis for time in a manner where it's actually improving for months as you sit. And it's the process of learning how to take it at that prime point and putting it into some kind of container where we can trap the moisture levels that we want within the flower. And each state has qualifications or quantifications as to what that amount is, and the temperature that it was held at. And once we can seal that, we can trap whatever was in that flower in that container. And from there, now you have an object that can be moved, shipped, stored, and moved about. But as the product is going through its developmental process, you have to be able to make sure that you're not doing anything that's creating overly high temperatures or huge fluctuations in humidity. Too much humidity, which remoistens the flower and creates the predisposition to rot, or not enough humidity, which then dries the flower out and takes it into a situation where it's crumbly and very fragile to touch. The effects on varietals vary. And so what you find is that products or flowers that are derived from what we learned of the sativas, 0 to 20, they have a much more open, airy structure. They had to develop that airy structure in order to deal with the higher humidity levels of that equatorial belt. Those plants have a very finer, more delicate type of material, and the cannabinoid profiles are more delicate. And because of that, when we're working with what we would call narrow leaf sativas, equatorials, the care has to be shown to a little higher degree, because we can dry it quicker, which means that if we make a mistake in our drying process, we can make it in a much faster level. And the nuances that make those equatorial cannabises so unbelievably psychoactive to us in terms of experience, we can lose those qualities also. So varietals that have very fine, delicate, open structure, very complex multi-bond meaning the sesquiterpene that you enjoy in the mouth, combined with that very delicate, complex monoterpene mix. In order to keep that as a total package, the curing and drying process for those varietals has to be done to a much higher degree of perfection, because you'll lose the subtle nuances that make those varietals what they are. When we get into heavier, denser, more solid, chunky flowers that could handle being in a drier environment, the key to that is to realize that they take longer to dry because they have more vegetative material. They also have a thicker, heavier, waxier leaf to keep them from drying out in that desiccating environment that they were originally from. So they have a slower process. They take longer to stabilize. They take longer to dry. And the issue with those is that when you dry them too quickly, you trap, it's almost called like suberization. Suberization is where we take a vegetable and it's like blanching is another word for it, where we put it into hot water, it seals the outside of the surface, trapping the moisture inside. And that happens traditionally with heavy set flowers. You'll see this with outdoor predominantly, where beautiful, rich outdoor cannabis flowers that are from these mountainous regions, these what we call indicas or heavy wide leaf drug cultivars, they have an ability to hold moisture inside that then becomes a fungal haven, and you end up having botrytis, bud rot, form while the product is actually in the bag. And so one type of varietal requires exceptional care to not over dry and to not overheat. And the other product requires you to understand how you dry it at a slower gradient so we can evenly pull the moisture throughout the flower. And then once we do that, how do we then hold that at the right environment for the curing process? Light is also an enemy to stabilizing flower. Light bleaches the varietal's colors. Sunlight is a detriment to storing any of these products. And that's why you see products that are designed to be craft are in typically sealed containers, some form of jar that has a dark coloration, packaging that's sunlight proof. Any of those type of situations allow you to have a lower level of deterioration. The colors of the flower have traditionally been used for the end user to indicate quality. And when you see a bleaching, when you see a paling that is unnatural, where it looks like it was leached out, the eye automatically picks that up, and it lets someone know that something happened along the way of the process that diminished the quality. And so it's important to understand that for these higher level quality flowers that are going to be held and then moved to a very specific market, the expectation of what that is crucial. Cannabis that goes into a faster supply chain, a lower price level, more of a velocity cannabis for bulk. It's not so important that these considerations take place, and it allows you to use lower cost packaging. So depending on where your end destination for the cannabis is, the packaging is a huge consideration, because if we can protect it from all the changes in environment and then exposure to air and then exposure to light, we can hold a product for a very long period of time. Different methodologies of cultivation seem to have different periods of holdability. And what we've found is that outdoor organic holds the longest, and indoor chemically driven holds the shortest. And it doesn't imply that the quality of the indoor chemical product is a bad product. It's just that fundamentally there's less material being used to grow it, which means that the overall nutrition package is simplified. So the plant gets the 14 major nutrients it needs, and then there might be a couple other amendments like silica added, but the lack of complexity seems to change the plant's ability to create bioprotective mechanisms to protect it. The outdoor environment has an extremely wide swing of temperature, from typically very hot to cool in the evening with a lot higher wind levels. That environment forces the plant to develop a higher level of bioprotectiveness. And what we've noticed over time is that the exquisite indoor products, as gorgeous as they are, they just have to be moved at a faster rate of speed. Otherwise, you start to see a degradation occur at a quicker pace. And then outdoor organic products seem to be able to have a longer holdability. And it doesn't mean that either one of the products is better or worse than the other. The user will determine that. But from the grower's point of view, the individual who's producing the product and selling it, you have a longer holdability with outdoor organic, and you have a shorter holdability with chemically grown indoor.